Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andrea Kanoki. I am coming to you live from Los Angeles, California today. Woo, it is super hot out there today, but I'm getting through it. I am so ready for the weekend. It has been a long week, folks. But the fact that I get to take the time today to talk with you all, share with you, and laugh with you makes it all so much better. I'm so excited to be here today. I love the fact that we have these podcasts now that just basically allow us to get real-time information on practically anything without having to do all the research. How cool is that? You just have to listen. That's it. Honestly, I'm most excited to share my stories and my experiences with you. Now, I'm a little worried that some of these stories might put me under a light that I don't necessarily want to be under. Of course, but I feel like it's one thing to read about people's mishaps and their misfortunes or even their perfect nights, but to actually hear someone telling the stories live of what went down, what happened, and how you overcame it, now that's a whole different ballgame. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for joining me. My hope is that we navigate through these stories and these experiences and even some anecdotes of not only midlife online dating, but dating in general. And I hope we do it with laughter, with joy, and with ease. After all, we are all just the same, right? After all, we're just a girl or a guy trying to figure out who we are and what exactly we're looking for and what makes us happy. So my plan is to take you on an adventure through my dating experiences. Some good, some bad, some downright ugly. But if you've never done online dating or even organic dating and you don't know where to start or you're too afraid to put yourself out there, then you've come to the right place. I want you to understand that there will be obstacles. Yes, there will be rejection, but allowing yourself to open up and to feel and to witness the loss of your own insecurities is all worth it in the end when you meet the right person. Dating's a journey. It puts us in an unfamiliar world. It makes us feel things that we've never possibly even felt before or didn't know we could feel. Now, I'm talking about both good and bad feelings here. I'll be sharing stories with you that look at things from different perspectives. There's a lot of good in there, even though it may not have worked out the way either I had hoped or the way he had hoped. At the end of the day, it still gave me hope. So every date made me a little less apprehensive, a little bit more hopeful, and gave me a little bit more insight into myself and into what I'm looking for. So today's topic is the first date. Now, I want to remind you, I am not by any means an expert in all things dating and relationships. I am just like you. I'm learning how to be patient. I'm learning how to be aware. And most of all, I'm learning how to be selective. So through trial and error, my person is going to come along, and I believe I'll know it when I see him. You guys, I am the biggest hopeless romantic, and it's going to take time, but hopefully it'll all be worth it in the end. Okay, we're going to jump right in. So one of the hardest things after a divorce is going out there on that anticipated first date. How do you prepare for the first date? What's it going to be like? What are you going to be like? Do you meet him somewhere? Do you let him pick you up? What do you wear? Do you dress up? Do you keep it casual? These are all things that run through your head while waiting for the time to get ready for the much anticipated first date. Now, I can't wait to tell you about my first date as a 43-year-old divorced woman. I'll fill you in on my thoughts and my fears, and hopefully you'll get a good laugh out of it. When we get to the end of this podcast, I'm going to give you my top 10 things to do and not to do on a first date. So make sure you stick through this with me till the end to find out. Okay, so in order to be fair to this situation and to be honest with my listeners, and so that you guys get a better understanding of where I'm coming from, I'm going to put myself out there and I'm going to tell you all about me. Okay, Andrea Kanoki. I'm 46 years old. I'm 5'9". I have long brunette hair and brown eyes. I was born and raised in Canada by my Jamaican mother and my Canadian father. I have one sister and one brother who are both older than I am, and they both live in Florida. I moved to Florida with my family when I was 18 years old, and it was there that I met my future husband. I was just barely 20 years old, just a baby, when I met him, and he was 23. We met in a dance club, and I was actually dancing with one of his best friends, and he kind of came up, sidled up to me, and kind of started talking to me, and next thing you know, I'm dancing with him. I mean, it was smooth. We ended up talking and hanging out that night. We had such a great time. He was super cute. He was a little bit taller than me, which that is a total necessity for me, and that is just a preference, but he had shoulder-length blonde hair and green eyes. He was totally not my type, you guys. I mean, definitely digging the long hair. It was good long hair, but I'm usually kind of more of a dark hair, dark skin kind of girl. But he was cute. Oof, I remember our first date so clearly. I had plans to go play bingo with my mom that night. It was a Saturday night. So yeah, that can tell you what I was doing on a Saturday night. So he called me up and asked me if he could take me out. And I told him I already had plans with my mom. And I jokingly said, well, you're welcome to come play bingo with us if you want. And he responded with, okay, sounds fun. Wait, what? That kind of threw me off. I was not expecting that at all. I mean, I thought he was pretty cool. What kind of cool guy is going to go play bingo on a Saturday night? Well, you just never know, I guess. So anyways, he pulled up to the bingo place on his motorcycle. I believe he called it a crotch rocket, if I'm not mistaken. He pulled off his helmet and his long mane just fell out of the helmet loosely, and he smiled at me, and I was hooked. We started dating shortly after that, but he had recently come out of a long-term relationship, and so we really just kind of dated on and off for the first couple years. He wasn't ready for a serious relationship, and I was still fairly young and just enjoying being young without too much pressure. It was tough at times, though, because when I say we dated on and off, we were both actually kind of dating other people in between, yet somehow we came back to each other. That is tough to do when you really like somebody, because you're kind of just going with the flow and you're doing it, just so that you don't be the only one. You're just kind of doing it so that you're not the only one who's giving them all the attention, but we made it through. So after about 2 years, we finally got it together and we became exclusive. Yes, 2 years. Yes. But we moved in together. Everything was great and was moving right on track when I found out I was pregnant. I was 24 years old. Talk about a game changer. Okay, I'm open to discuss that whole situation later down the road on another podcast, but for now, I'm just going to continue on. So, what did we do? We got married. Crazy. 1 minute we were young and free, and then the next minute you're getting married and you're pregnant. Surprise! My ex and I were great together. We got along great. We supported each other. We were there for each other. We had fun together. We had 2 beautiful sons together. I mean, what more could I ask for? Well, unfortunately for me, I needed more. Bottom line was that he was my best friend, and I no longer wanted to have sex with my best friend. I guess that was the problem. So, although it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, I filed for divorce. I've now been divorced for 3.5 years. Don't worry, we are still great friends. We co-parent our sons. We still hang out as a family at times. We talk to each other about our dating lives. Yeah, weird. Again, another podcast. But most importantly, we still care about each other and we respect each other enough to know that we just weren't right together. So, coming out of a 20-year marriage, you can imagine what it was like figuring out how to date. This was a whole new world. It was nothing like I knew before. We didn't have online dating back before I got married, and I was definitely out of practice. I mean, it's funny. I still cringe when I think back to that first date. It was terrifying. Coming out of being married for that long, I had no idea what to expect. I was so unsure of myself at the time. I was insecure. My heart hadn't fully healed. I was anxious and impatient, and I knew the only way to get through this was to just do it. Now, don't get me wrong. I was excited as all get up. So I met my first date, let's call him David. I met my first date, David, online. I don't recall exactly which online dating site it was since I've been on quite a few since then, but if I had to guess, I'd say it was Bumble. So I recall sending David the first message. It was probably something cheesy like, "Hey, happy hump day. Hope your Wednesday's off to a great start." So cheesy. But what did I know? So I was anxiously waiting for him to respond. I'm sure you can imagine what all was going through my head during this time. Wondering if he had seen my awesome first message, thinking there's no way I'm going to hear back from this guy. So I'm just sitting around checking my phone every few minutes, wondering if he's going to respond when suddenly I get a notification. You have a new match. Oh my God, I remember being so excited about those 5 words. You have a new match. I think I was most excited because not only did it mean that David was interested in me, but it meant that someone was interested, that I still had something going on that was of interest to a man, and that meant that maybe more would be interested. It was a bit of a mind game, but that's kind of what I needed right then. It fed my ego and it gave me that much-needed validation. So I hopped online and engaged in a back-and-forth conversation with David for, probably a couple of days, I think, before he finally asked me out. I mean, we were talking about everything soup to nuts. Okay, wait a second. That didn't come out right. Okay, you know what I mean. So we were talking about what we did for a living. We talked about our families. We talked about what we'd like to do for fun, where we had previously traveled, where we'd like to go in the future. I mean, we talked about everything. We talked about dating online. We talked about what that was like, what we were looking for in a relationship. You name it, we covered it. I felt like I really had a good understanding of who David was and what he was looking for. I felt like I was starting to really know him. Our conversations were easy and fun, and they just allowed us to talk about ourselves in a way that just made us comfortable. So I wasn't totally sure back then, what's a fair amount of time to spend talking back and forth with somebody before you actually meet them? I mean, is it 1 day? Is it 3 days? 2 weeks? I don't know. Or is it just when you feel comfortable enough to want to meet? And who decides, what is enough time? Sometimes I think that you can talk too much before meeting someone and it kind of leaves nothing to be desired. I also wasn't sure what the protocol was for the first date. Do you just meet for a drink? What about coffee? Somebody once told me that coffee's a closer. That's the person that's dumping you. They take you for coffee. I don't know. Do you agree to go out for a whole dinner? I think a whole dinner can sometimes set you up for failure too because there's so many courses to get through. I mean, it just can put you in such an awkward situation. You have to figure out how to keep a conversation going for possibly hours. What if you don't like the guy right off the bat and then he just starts ordering appetizers and he orders additional drinks and you're already bored and you haven't even gotten to the main course yet? I don't know. What about meeting them? Do you agree to meet them at the restaurant? Does he pick you up? Does he know where you live? Hell no. So many unanswered questions. So many unanswered questions. So again, flying blind, I finally agree to meet him for dinner. So we agree to meet at a mutual location. So I pull up to the agreed upon location and parked my car thinking we're going to a restaurant right in this area. So I'm waiting and I'm waiting. Guess who's late? You'll hear me talk about that later in my do's and don'ts on a first date. David. When David finally arrived, he let me know that he had made reservations at a restaurant nearby and asked me to hop in his car and he'd drive me there. Wait, what? I don't even know what just happened. Why did we meet here so I can get in your car and drive somewhere else? That wasn't the plan. So now I got to think quick on my feet. So definitely in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have gotten the car, but I did. But that relates to the fact that this was my first date after 20 years of marriage. I had no idea. Okay, well, I had some idea. But I had no idea that probably wasn't the best and safest move. Thankfully, he wasn't a serial killer. First lesson learned. Believe me, that was the first lesson of many. After you're done listening to my podcast, you will hopefully have learned many tips and tricks and lessons into making your dating life the best that it can be. Again, I am stressing the fact that I am not a dating wizard here. I'm not your fairy godmother. I'm not going to make the man of your dreams just suddenly appear. I'm simply a woman in her 40s who's had some crazy dating experiences over the last 3.5 years, and I'm sitting here bearing my soul to you in hopes that even one thing I say will resonate when you're out on your dates. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When I return, we are going to dive deep into one of my favorite dating apps, Bumble. Stay tuned.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. TSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, everybody. Okay, we are going to continue now talking a little bit. I'm going to veer off from the David story a little bit. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Bumble because I think a lot of you don't really know what that is and how that works and what the site entails. So I'm going to talk about it and make it a little bit easier for you guys to maybe want to get on it and try it out and see how you like it. And then the next segment will come back to David. Okay, so for those of you that don't know much about the dating sites, I'd be inclined to say I'm a bit of an expert at this point. I am putting that out there. I have tried a bunch of the different sites. There are numerous ones, way more than you probably even know. So I've only tried like the main ones. I haven't tried all of the extra crazy ones, but I've definitely done a lot of the main ones. So it all depends on what you're looking for. There are sites for heterosexual dating. There's sites for homosexual dating. There are hookup sites. There's farmers only sites. There's Christian singles. There's sugar daddy sites. Wait, maybe I shouldn't have said that one right after Christian singles, but what else? Okay, I will take time on another podcast to dive deep into each one of these sites to help give you some more information so you know what you're getting yourself into, and some background on all of it, and I'll do a comparison and let you know everything there is to know about all the sites. But today, I'm going to give you a little bit of info on my favorite online dating app, which is Bumble. So, a little history. Bumble was created by a woman named Whitney Wolfe Herd. So, she was actually a colleague with somebody at Tinder prior to starting her Bumble career, and she eventually ended up suing Tinder for sexual harassment. Who knew that? So after winning over $1 million in that lawsuit, she was approached about starting a new online dating app. And her idea was to make it more of a female-focused app. Her aim was to create an empowering and comfortable online dating space for women, one that allowed them to feel safe and basically in control of their own destiny. So this idea was brilliant. It had not been done before. I think it was brilliant. Just FYI, she was named one of Forbes 30 Under 30, and her company is currently valued at $8 billion with a B. So on Bumble, it's required that the woman makes the first move. Now, I'm sure your first thought is, what? No way, I'm not asking out the guy. But hold on. I want you to just think of this in a different way, because this can be both good and bad, and it's not as terrifying as it seems. So you have to think about it this way. It allows you to completely vet someone out before you even go out with them. It allows you to analyze their profile in depth. You can scan over their pictures time after time after time again, zoom in, zoom out, just keep looking at them numerous times if necessary. And most importantly, it allows you to reach out when you're ready. You get to take control of the situation. You get to take control of the conversation. So think about that. That's a really empowering thing for women, to be able to really take control of their own destiny. Now, the men only have 24 hours to respond to you once you message them, or they disappear from your dating queue for good. So this can be really, really maddening at times. I mean, 24 hours, is everyone sitting there at their computer or checking their phone constantly to see if they've been matched on Bumble? Well, okay, yeah, maybe I was doing that in the beginning, but I don't do that now. I mean, I just check it here and there. People don't just sit there checking their Bumble site every 10, 15 minutes. So 24 hours is not really a long time. But it's exciting and it's exhilarating to get that notification. But realistically, people just aren't doing that. Most people are sleeping for like 8 to 10 of those 24 hours. Okay, well, 10 seems like a lot, but that tells you the kind of guys that I'm dating that are sleeping 10 hours a day. So anyways, you can get more time on the radar if you choose to pay for the dating site. You have the option to be on the site for $0, but in that case, you are limited to what you can actually see and do on the app. So for example, you can see each person as they pop up, and you can choose to swipe left or right if you're interested, left if you're not interested. Don't get that one mixed up. However, you can't see anyone that actually likes you unless you both match. I hope that makes sense. So you both have to match in order for you to move forward and have a conversation. So you can be swipe happy and swipe all day long on the right. But if they don't swipe back on you, you ain't talking to nobody. So you can't see anyone that actually likes you unless you both match. So you could have an entire beehive of people that like you and want to get to know you, but you can't actually see them unless you both match. I hope that makes sense. You also don't have the ability to set the advanced filters if you don't pay for the app. So they set you up with all different filters. It could be distance from your home. It could be your age range. You can set whatever age range you want. Your height. That one's a big one for me. I'm kind of tall, so I like my man to be kind of tall. Your education, like what years of school you've done, if you've gone to college, etc. Your religion, your political beliefs. I don't even touch those filters. Don't go there. It can also be, do they have children? Do they want children? Do they smoke? Etc. So if you don't pay for the site, they may allow you to set up, I think it's 3 basic filters that you get for free that you don't have to pay for. So most likely that's age. So you can set your age range wherever you want that to be. If you like to date really young guys, and you set it really young. Or if you like to date really old women, you would set it really old. So you can kind of put it wherever you want for that. Body type preference, that's probably another basic filter. So that could mean if you like super skinny people or just skinny people or athletic, overweight, curvy, whatever your preference is, you can set for that. And then there's distance from your home. That's usually a big one. Especially in California, it seems like everybody is so far away. I mean, I could put in a distance of like 10 miles and it comes back with somebody who's so far away because of traffic once you put it in there. So you got to kind of be careful about that and know the areas that you are looking to meet someone. Anything more than that, you pretty much have to pay for it. So I mean, I guess it's fine. I think it distinguishes between those that are super serious about finding their true match and those that are maybe just, bumbling along to see what they find up there. So you never know. Okay, so once all your filters are set, the swiping begins. So once again, you swipe left if you're not interested, and you swipe right if you are interested. Now, you don't want to just go crazy and start swiping on everybody because then the Bumble experts don't think you're serious and you can ultimately get blocked from the site. Plus, you end up with this entire beehive queue filled with people that you don't even know, and then you're searching through trying to find the person that you really do want to talk to or that you really do match with, but you have all these people that you're really not interested in, but you just swiped on because it was kind of fun and it made you feel good. So don't do that. Okay. So now just because you swipe on them, that doesn't mean that it's an automatic match. That just sends it up into some cloud in the beehive sky somewhere until that person also swipes right on you and it becomes a match and they now appear in your queue. So at that point, the women can begin the conversation. So it can be a little bit scary and a little overwhelming at first, but then you kind of get used to it. And you end up having some really great conversations with people. Now, I'm pretty funny about my conversations. I like to ask a lot of questions, but I also like to have my questions reciprocated. So I give them what I call the 3 strikes you're out rule. I reach out to them first, of course, because that's what the app is all about. So I usually start out with referencing something that I notice in their profile. Maybe I point out that they have a really cute dog, or that maybe they have said that they like to cook. So I may ask what their favorite food is or their favorite dishes that they like to cook. Then I usually ask how either they're doing or if they maybe have big plans for the upcoming weekend. At least that kind of gets the conversation going. So when they respond, the hope is that they, one, find that you're cute or funny because you picked up on something in their profile. Two, they respond with more than just one-word answers. That's the worst. Or three, that they actually reciprocate and ask you a question or two back. That's what we're really going for here. That's ideally what should happen. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. That's where my 3-strike rule comes into play. Okay, I get it. People are nervous, or they're busy, or they're just not great communicators. But if I ask how you're doing, or if you have big weekend plans, is it really that difficult at the end of the response to just add a you? Or what about you? It's not that hard, right? It seems so easy. I mean, if you said to me, hey, how's your day going? I would say, it's not bad. Got some work done, been pretty productive. What about you? It's so simple, one would think. At least it gets the conversation going back and forth, but you would not believe how hard that is for some people at times. I mean, I might ask the questions and they respond with, oh, I'm doing well. No, not much planned. Silence. Crickets. Nothing. Okay, so I try again and I say, so how's the dating site working out for you so far? Met anyone yet? And they respond with, I've met a few people, but no connection yet. Followed by silence. Crickets. Okay. Do you see where I'm going with this? So then I give it one last try. And I say, sorry to hear that. Yes, it can be tough to make a great connection. So what do you like to do for fun? He responds with, I like to listen to live music, play basketball, go to the beach, travel. That's a common one. Hang out with friends. That's it. Silence. Crickets. I mean, come on, give me something to work with. What do you do there? I don't know. That's where I'm like, peace out. Gotta go. I just don't have time to sit there and talk with somebody that is not willing to just turn around and ask a question back. I just don't think it's that hard. I mean, don't they want to know something about me? It's not that I want it to be all about me. It's just that if I'm going to ask you 3 questions, you can't come back with just one. Who wants to just sit there and hear about somebody else the entire time and not have them ask anything about you? That tells me there is zero interest in knowing anything about me or wanting to pursue anything, because if they don't want to know about me now, they're not going to want to know about me later. That's how I feel. You get what you get up front. And then you got to decide from there if you're willing to tolerate that or you're willing to move forward with something like that. And if you're not, then you just got to cut it quick and move on. Guys, they are not the only bee in the hive. There are so many other bees out there. Okay, I'm going to stop referencing the bees to people. There are so many other guys or girls out there for you. And I just want you to remember that. So you can't take it too personal when you're on these dating sites. You may just not be the right person for them at that time. In general, you just may not be. It's not a personal thing. You're not going to be the right match for everybody, and that's okay. And that is really hard thing to be okay with up front. I know when you're first starting out, and then you consider that like a rejection when they unmatch you, or they just don't swipe on you, and you can't do that. Meeting people organically, not everybody is a match for you. You may not find somebody attractive in person, and you have to remember that when you're looking at their profiles, they are putting their best foot forward there. So they're putting their best pictures, hopefully. Some put terrible pictures, let me tell you. I don't know what they're thinking. But for the most part, they should be putting their best profile pictures there. They're saying things that makes you want to go out with them. And it may not necessarily be true. So you always have to remember that. You always have to take it with a grain of salt. And you can't allow yourself to get upset about it and discouraged and feel rejected and all of those terrible things, because that has nothing to do with you and who you are. So just remember that when you're doing all this bumbling, as they call it. Okay, so that's basically the rundown on Bumble, just so you're all in the know. So I wanted to also reference that there's a lot of things that you can be thinking about when you're going to go on your first date. I'm kind of coming back to the first date because I know I want to finish my story about David with you all. So I'm going to touch on a few things about things that you need to be thinking about. I know that when you're going to go out on your first date, you're nervous and you're worried and you're afraid to let your guard down, but you just have to go with it. I know you're wondering, what's going to happen if something crazy happens? What if I say the wrong thing? What if they get the wrong idea? What if I'm put in an uncomfortable position? Now, don't get me wrong. I have plenty more stories that address just that, being put in an uncomfortable position and what you do to get out of it or just to get through it, because it happens all the time and it's going to happen again. It's happened to me plenty of times in the past. It's going to happen in the future because you can't predict that kind of stuff and you don't know when it's going to happen and you just have to go with the flow. Okay, so I know that you can be vulnerable and you can be nervous and you're too nervous to say anything or afraid they won't like you or that they'll think differently of you, but you just have to go with the flow. Okay, I know you want to somehow give off that sex appeal, the up for anything kind of girl or guy. So you're so afraid that if you just be your true authentic self that they aren't going to like you. So what do you do when that happens? Again, you go with it. You get in the car with the stranger. I say that very lightly, not with a real stranger, but somebody, that you've talked to. It's okay. You hold his hand at dinner. You maybe let him kiss you goodnight. Not to say that any of these things are bad or too much. I'm just saying, be who you are. If you feel like it's the right time for any of those things, go with it. Okay, so let's dive into that a little bit more. What is okay and not okay to do on a first date? Are there rules? Are there guidelines? Suggestions? Here's my thoughts. It's okay to go with the flow. Lean in a little. That's what they say. Just lean in. I think you should meet your date at a designated location rather than having him come to your house to pick you up. That's what I think. I don't want a stranger coming in knowing where I live for the mere fact that if it doesn't work out, I don't want him coming back later the next day trying to knock on my door. See how my confidence is up and I'm thinking they're coming back the next day, but I don't want that. So I think that you should set up to meet at like a designated location. I think you should make sure that someone knows where you are by either dropping a pin or calling a friend when you get there and giving them the location. I think you need to keep your guard up at all times, not in a way that you don't allow people to get in or to talk to you or that you're stiff and nervous, any of that. I'm just saying be aware. Be aware of your situation. Be aware of your surroundings. You don't know this person, and there's nothing wrong with being a little bit skeptical. Okay, so ask a lot of questions. Try to find out as much as you can about your date. And I would be doing that back when you're talking on the dating app. Find out as much information as you can. Get their last name. If they went to college, find out where they went to college because you can be doing your research before you even go meet these people. Google is amazing for that. You can find all the people that you need so that you don't end up getting catfished. I don't even know if you guys know what catfished is, but that's basically when somebody pretends to be somebody that they're not. And that's a story I'm going to tell as well because that just happened to me a few weeks ago. So I can't wait to tell that story. Anyways, you want to find out as much as you can about your date. What do they like to do? Where do they like to hang out? Where do they work? Does he have family? Knowing this information is going to help you to feel a lot more comfortable in moving forward. Okay, so that's kind of my rundown on Bumble and my thoughts on things that you just need to be aware of and keeping yourself a little bit more safe. There are so many other dating sites out there, and I will touch on those in future podcasts. There are some that I probably wouldn't recommend because I think a lot of them can be just for hookups and that kind of thing. And so I hope and want you to realize that you're looking for something a little bit more than that. So I'm going to be back in just a few minutes. I'm going to finish my story on the infamous David. Don't go anywhere.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. This means so much that you guys have tuned in to listen to me, and I hope that I was able to give you a little bit better insight into online dating. Like I said, we'll touch more on each dating site on later podcasts. There's so many different ones to go over, and so I think that'll be very beneficial to give you that information and help you decide which one works best for you if you choose to do online dating, and which ones to kind of steer away from. But I feel like you needed to have somewhat of an understanding of how at least Bumble works for you to fully appreciate my story about David. Okay, so now going back to my date with David. Let's see, where did we leave off? Let's do just a little bit of a recap. Okay, I met David on Bumble, as we talked about. This was my first post-divorce date. David arrived slightly late for our first date, need to remind you of that, and although we agreed to meet at a set location, he then asked me to get in his car and drive to another location for dinner. Probably shouldn't have done it, but I did. Okay, everyone caught up? Moving on. So I want to give you a description of David so that you can picture him in your mind and kind of follow along. So David was in his late 40s, I'd say maybe 47, 48, if I remember correctly. He was definitely taller than me. I'd say maybe 6'1" or 6'2". For those of you that don't know me, height is a big component for me. As mentioned before, I'm 5'9", and although the guy will almost always say that it doesn't bother him if I'm taller than he is, that he's a confident man, blah, blah, blah. The problem is that it bothers me. And that's what's important, right? You have to have your own preferences, and you can't let people tell you something different. I've had many times that I've put my dating preference online about their height and that I'm looking for a taller man, and people give me grief about it. I hate that it seems shallow, but it is just a preference. It's very much like somebody else saying they're looking for a brunette or something like that. So I go with it. Being taller, I already kind of feel like I'm a tall girl. So then to be with a man that's shorter than me, it just doesn't feel right. And I literally do put it on my dating apps. I put it in my profile. I put that I'm 5'9". I prefer a taller man, that I like to wear heels. Again, some give me grief over it, but seriously, I don't know why. They say whatever they want. They say if they're looking for somebody skinny or curvy or brunette or blonde or whatever. So I say taller. That's my prerogative. Anyways, watch out. Anyways, he was a bald guy, but he wore it well. He was in fairly good shape, especially for an older man. I mean, he had a cute face, maybe a few teeth issues, but who cares? Overall, he was a good catch. I thought I did well for my first date. After all, at this point, I really had no idea where I was on the scale of 1 to 10, so pretty much just kind of getting my bearings. So we ended up going to a cute little Cuban place. I'd never had Cuban food before, so I was game. It wasn't too far of a drive, but I admit it was a little bit uncomfortable. My guard was definitely up. I was in a stranger's car. This was my first date. I really had no idea where we were going, and so that just made me uncomfortable in general. I remember trying to quickly turn on the location on my phone just in case. It's terrible. You think about all the worst things that can happen, but in my case, I guess these were all in hindsight at that point. I was already in the car. So we drove in silence for a good portion of the way. I mean, it kind of seemed like forever, and I started to get a little bit nervous, but I knew it was going to be okay. He finally turned on the radio, which broke the ice, which was good. It wasn't a terrible ride, but like I said, I would have preferred to take my own car and just met him there. I'm not even really sure why we met somewhere else first. I don't know, maybe that's his thing. Who knows? Anyways, we got to the restaurant. It was a cute little restaurant. It was Cuban, like I mentioned. We walked in and the hostess sat us in a booth in the corner. I kind of started to wonder if he had specifically asked for that particular booth because he immediately slid in next to me, real close. Even though it was one of those circular booths where he still could have been somewhat close, but not right next to me, there just wasn't much room between us at all. I was just going with the flow. We ordered our food. Things kind of calmed down. We had good conversation, and that was enjoyable. Again, I thought he was attractive. The conversation did seem to flow, and the food was good. And then it happened. I had my hand resting on the seat next to me, and he suddenly slid his hand slowly over towards mine and just rested his hand on top of my hand. I wasn't sure what to think. This was all so new. Was this normal? Do guys really hold your hand that fast on a date when you don't even know them? I mean, we'd only been there maybe 30, 45 minutes. It seemed a little fast for me, but I don't know the whole ruling on that or if there even is one. Again, I guess you just go with the flow. But his hands felt weird. Again, I don't know how this is going to come across, but I'm just trying to make sure you get a really good idea and picture what was going on. His hands were really dry and like callus-like. They were very rough feeling, like they hadn't seen lotion in years. I just didn't like the way they felt. I was really surprised at how much I was in tune with my senses. I guess everything just seemed a little more weird and amplified, maybe because it was new. I'm not sure. At one point, he let go of my hand, and I felt almost relieved, like somehow he felt what I did and decided to give me some space. But then he came back to it. But this time, it was even more weird. He reached out his hand, palm faced up to me. And I remember looking down at his hand and thinking, wow, those are so wrinkly. They looked like old man hands. I wasn't sure why. He wasn't that old. Maybe he worked with his hands a lot. I don't know. It was such a turnoff, not going to lie. That kind of freaked me out. And then I just started noticing everything. I noticed that his arms were really short, like T-Rex short. They just didn't look like they even belonged to him. And I know, again, this is going to sound petty, but I no longer wanted anything to do with this. I didn't want to hold his hand. I didn't want to look at his arms. I didn't want to do anything, so I didn't. It's funny how you don't even realize that certain things even turn you on or completely turn you off. And it feels at times like it's completely out of your control. I've never had an issue with hands before, but all of a sudden, Andrea's big turnoff is a wrinkly old man hands with short arms. Who knew? So we finished dinner and we went back to the car. At this point, I had managed to avoid any further hand holding. So once we got into his car, he turned it on and we just sat there for a moment with the engine running. I wasn't really sure where this was going. Why are we just sitting here? All this craziness starts running through my head again. I found myself making sure I had quick access to the door handle, knew exactly where that was. I refused to put on my seatbelt until we were actually driving in case I needed to make a quick getaway. And I'm again thinking, why are we sitting here? So he then again turns on the music and he turns to me and he says, hey, do you remember during our conversation that you mentioned that you really like sexy music? Now to me, that meant something like Enya, very soothing, grooving, relaxing, sexy music, right? The kind where you're just kind of feeling it. Well, he said, have I got a treat for you? I've got some music you're going to like. He ends up turning on some old school grinding song. I'm talking like 50 Cent's Candy Shop. Okay, our idea of sexy was not the same thing. Next thing I know, he starts dancing in the car. I don't even know what's going on at this point. I didn't know whether to laugh. I didn't know if I should cry. I just sat back and watched. And then he looks at me and makes the comment, I told you I could dance. Yeah, you might have mentioned that, but I didn't know that I was going to be forced to watch these dance moves in the confines of his own car. This went on for like a good 10 minutes, no joke. Hips gyrating, hands making their own little movements, giving me the old eye contact. I finally asked him where he got these dancing skills from, and his response was, oh, did I not mention I was previously a male dancer? Huh, it all made sense now, didn't it? A male dancer. Yes, I'm using air quotes on that. Not sure how I missed asking that question in the pre-screening. Needless to say, it was quite a few interesting moments. So he drives me back to my car, and all I can think about on the way back, other than his fun dance moves, is if he's going to try to kiss me or not. So I quickly gather up my things, and he starts to lean in to hug me. And I feel like he's kind of holding back. He's not sure what to do. And then I start hesitating. Is he coming in? Is he not? So I just kind of dodge it, right? I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't even sure I wanted that. Is that a do on a first date? To kiss? My thought on that now is probably pretty different than it was back then. I'm sure back then there was no way I was going to kiss anyone on the first date. I was scared. But now I think it just depends on the moment. Here's my thoughts on a kiss on the first date. You want to get to know the person before that even happens, right? You want to feel comfortable. You want to feel like there's some sort of a connection. There's some sort of chemistry there. You might be feeling it, and you might catch yourself looking at his lips intensely while he's talking to you. But when it comes down to it, I think you just kind of go with whatever you're feeling in the moment. I just had someone ask me that this past week. He asked me if a kiss on a first date is appropriate. Is it a do or is it a don't? Something to think about. I guess if I asked the self-proclaimed kissing expert Andrea she's the author of the book Kissing, Everything You Want to Know About One of Life's Sweetest Pleasures, this is what she'd say. Now keep in mind, she's a big proponent of carpe kissum. That is, if a spark of your courage and chemistry encourages a smooch, you should trust your instincts and lean into it. After all, kissing as a dating vetting process has been around forever. That's kind of what I always say. Just lean into it. It's kind of like, I don't know if you've heard that term before. You either lean into it or you lean out of it. A lot of times, some of the relationship experts will say, if you're feeling it, lean in. If you're thinking you want to call somebody when you shouldn't be calling them and you kind of harassed them, lean out. So that's kind of the difference there. Now, I'd have to wholeheartedly agree with her statement. I think it's okay if you're both feeling it and the moment allows for it. It's good to just use your best judgment. If there's no kiss me vibe going on, then it's best to just push it to the back burner. But if you're willing to seize the kiss and suss out if your Tinder match might be mate-worthy, well, you stand to learn from a kiss on a first date situation. You can actually learn a lot by the way someone kisses, how they care for themselves, their hygiene, even their state of mind. You can also see how they might care for you. Are they affectionate? Are they tuned in? Are they attentive? Now, I'm not one that likes a sloppy, wet kiss. That is totally inappropriate. But an appropriately timed kiss at times can be perfect and leave you wanting more. That's how the date should end, in my opinion. In the case with David, it was neither warranted nor welcomed. There was clearly no connection or chemistry. Anyways, David didn't get a kiss that night. I had a really nice time with him, and it allowed me to get the first date out of the way, but I just wasn't feeling a connection in that way. So I returned the hug, and I was on my way. He continued to reach out to me multiple times after that night, but I just wasn't interested. I hate to say it, and I honestly didn't know how to handle the situation at the time, so I pretty much just ghosted him after that. That is so wrong of me to say. Ghosting, everybody, is wrong. I will do a podcast on ghosting because there's a lot to be said about that and how it can affect people. And we really don't think about that when we're doing it to them. We're kind of just thinking about ourselves and how we're going to get out of the situation. And it makes it really easy for us to do that. But we do need to think about the other person on the other end of that ghosting. So I will touch base on that later on. Anyways, that was my first date post-divorce. Not terrible, not great. I think you learned a little bit more about yourself every time you put yourself out there. It's intimidating and it can take you completely out of your comfort zone. But you're never going to find that person or that next great relationship without taking a chance. Like Wayne Gretzky once said, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. I always love that quote. So although David didn't end up being my perfect date that we all hoped for, it was a great first starter date. It got my confidence up a little bit. It gave me insight, a little wisdom. Those are all good things. You have to look at every date as a learning experience. I learned a lot about what are the right things to do on a first date and what are the wrong things to do on a first date. And so that's what you have to take from these. Even though you may not be a perfect match with the person that you went out with, every date that you do is one step closer to finding that perfect person. And it helps you to realize what you're really looking for, and it helps you to set your standards, and you do start to become a little bit more selective because you know what you're willing to tolerate, what you're willing to take, what you're willing to give to be in that relationship. So I think that's really important to take those learning things from every date that you have. Now, when we come back, we're going to touch on the top 10 things to do and don't on a first date. This is my list. I plucked it from many larger lists. It doesn't mean it has to be your list, but these are things that are important to me, and so I'm going to share them with you. So you can take them with a grain of salt. You might think some of them are funny. Some of them you might be like, oh, I've totally done that. And that's okay. You're going to learn from every single one of them. So you use them as you see fit. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back, everybody. So I'm excited to just finish out this podcast today with talking about the top 5 things not to do on a first date and the top 5 things that you should do on a first date. Now, again, these are just kind of my preferences, my thoughts, my ideas on what you should do. It doesn't mean that it's set in stone and that you have to follow along on this. You guys will figure out your own things, but I'm just kind of giving you a little heads up on things that I think you should think about when you do go on these dates and things that you should remember not to do. So overall, I don't think my date was too bad. I think there was a lot of funny moments, some not so funny moments, but for the most part, I think it was a decent date. Okay, so here are a few things that I think you should remember. We'll start with the don'ts first. Number 1, don't show up late. Do you remember when I mentioned David showed up late? Oh, poor David. That just kind of sets the tone for the whole date when they show up late. It just kind of makes you feel like they don't have full respect for you. Nothing says you don't care more than showing up late to a first date. This is your first impression. Now, you wouldn't want to be sitting around waiting 15, 20 minutes for the guy to show up, would you? So why would you do that to him? That would just indicate to me that he doesn't respect your time and maybe he's not that interested in meeting you. So don't do the same to him. In fact, you should really do your best to show up 5 to 10 minutes early if you can. Let him know you're excited to meet him and that you don't want to keep him waiting. Now, I'm telling you this because I am guilty of doing this quite often. I even showed up to a wedding late once with my son. That was really bad. So I'm really trying to be better about that and not show up late because it just messes with you. Not to mention the fact that then you're rushing, you're in such a hurry to get there and everything's going crazy. Why not just get there a little bit early, get your bearings, breathe, be calm, and be ready to have a great time. Number 2, don't be vague about who's paying for the date. This is a big one, and I plan to do a whole show on this because I've had many conversations on the whole who's paying topic. To me, it's just a chivalrous thing, but to some people, it's a different situation. In my opinion, the man should wine and dine you and treat you like the princess that you are for the first few months of dating. I do think they should do that. I feel it's chivalrous. I think it's sexy. I think it sets the tone for who the guy is and how he was raised and how he thinks about you. Now, I don't think that it should be expected on every date, and I do think it's good for a woman to offer to pay at times, even if he doesn't allow it. And I know we're all kind of hoping he's not going to allow it, right? We kind of offer, but maybe we're not really wanting to pay, but it sounds like we should probably at least offer, right? Well, it just lets him know that you aren't taking him for granted and just out for a free meal. So if you're planning to offer to pay for the check or at least split it, then you better be ready to do that. Number 3, don't get ahead of yourself. It's okay to get excited before you go out with someone, but stay realistic. As pessimistic as it sounds, if your expectations are low, then a good date will be a welcome surprise and a bad date will be no biggie. You know, you just don't want to set the bar so high that you're so excited about the date and you're already planning your future with kids and the white picket fence and the little dog. You don't want to do that. You want to just stay grounded. You want to remember that every step is a progress and you just want to be present in the moment. So don't worry so much about the future and when you're going to see them next and already picturing, them meeting your parents and all that kind of stuff. Just stay in the moment. And that's going to help you to have a really great time because you're going to be really present and they're going to recognize that and they're going to see that. So I think that's really, really important. Number 4, don't let him take you to a second location if you don't like him. I mean, that seems pretty obvious, but you would be surprised. I mean, of course, if it sounds like the easiest route, then you don't have to reject him, right, to his face. And you're thinking you might start to like him a little bit more if you spend more time with him. Or, I don't know, maybe you just want to get some free drinks and you want some more free food. And so you decide to just continually go on to the next location and hang out with him longer and longer, even though you knew you weren't feeling it from the moment you walked up and saw him or when you're sitting at the table. Don't do it. All it does is it puts you in an uncompromising position and it draws it out. Now you've spent even more time together. He may have tried to now hold your hand at this point or even try to kiss you. So now you're putting yourself into another situation that you shouldn't have been in because you should have ended it a long time ago when you weren't feeling it. If you'd ended it earlier before the second location, he would have been more likely to realize that maybe you just weren't that into him. But since you agreed now to go and continue the date, now he's thinking different. So now he's thinking, oh, okay, so she's into me because if she wasn't, she would have ended it already. But now she wants to go on with me and she wants to go somewhere else. So now that gives me the in to hold her hand, to, put my hand on her knee or to try to kiss her or whatever that may be. So now it just kind of puts you in an even more awkward position, right? So don't set yourself up. I mean, what do you say? You just let them know that maybe you have an early morning and that you have to get up for that, or that you're super tired and you need to get some sleep, or if you really just don't like them, then just be honest. Let them know that you just aren't feeling it. It's going to sting for a bit, but in the long run, you know you're doing him a favor. It doesn't help anyone to sit and pretend like you like them more than you do. And let me tell you, I've been guilty of that plenty of times. I tend to stick and stay in relationships longer than I should because they are just a great person, even though I'm not feeling it. And so then what happens is I'm kind of like, well, I'll just try it again. We'll go out another time, just see if I like him a little bit more. And then next thing you know, you're 2, 3, 4 months down the road. Now you've got all this dating, and now it's even harder to turn around and tell the guy that you don't like him because he's going, well, wait a second. You've been hanging out with me for the last 3, 4 months, and now you're saying that you didn't feel it with me? So it's a lot harder to do that. So just kind of letting you know, if you're not feeling it, just cut it at the end of the date. Just let them know you're not feeling it or you make up some excuse. Don't go on to another location with them. It's just going to make it worse. Number 5, don't talk about your ex. It is so hard to do. I think it's that we find that it's easy to have a conversation about our past stuff and to bring it up because you feel like you're talking about yourself and you try to say things to make it not seem like you have any interest in the person from the ex or that you are totally over it. But what it does instead is it makes them think that you are still into your ex. No good can come of this. Either you're going to seem bitter or heartless or like you're still hung up on them. And any one of those things is a huge turnoff. The last thing a guy wants to hear about on his date with you is how much your ex hurt you or the sweet things he used to do for you or even that you still have a connection with him. Oddly enough, most guys want to imagine that you've not gone out with anyone else or ever been intimate with anyone else. They prefer to think you're the only one. So why give them something to think about? Okay, on to the do's. I'm going to tell you a few things that I think you should do. Do order a big girl meal. That's what you need to do. Girl, eat. If you're hungry, eat. I really don't think a guy is impressed anymore when a girl just orders a puny little salad and some water. Guys actually prefer girls that can just be themselves and eat a big old juicy burger. I think that it just makes it easier when they're sitting there eating a little salad. It makes you seem almost a little bit pretentious, I think. And I'm not saying that you can order a salad because there's some pretty great salads out there and maybe you're watching what you eat or whatever, but don't order one little salad and ask for 2 forks. That's a little strange. If you're worried about racking up the bill because you plan to offer to pay at the end, and so maybe that's why you're ordering a salad because you don't want to have this big old bill that if he does say, yeah, you can pay, or yeah, you can pay half that you're going to get stuck with, then just offer to split a meal with him. Offer maybe to order an appetizer, and then maybe you'll split an entree. it's just, you know what? It gives it a little bit of intimacy when you do that. You're now kind of sharing a meal. You're figuring out something that you like to order together. It does keep the cost down, so it makes him feel like you're not out just to gouge him for his money and make him pay this big old bill at the end too. So it can really come across as sweet or romantic rather than cheap if you do that. The second thing you want to do is act interested in what he's saying. No one wants to go on a first date with the human equivalent of a dead fish handshake. I mean, if you don't like where the date is headed, then just end it early. But if you genuinely like him and you want to know more about him, then ask questions. Use eye contact. Did you know, this is something that somebody once told me, I really didn't know this, and it totally makes sense, but did you know that they say the way for a man to fall in love with you is for you to ask tons of questions about him rather than him asking questions about you? So the big plan is, and I've kind of done this before and it absolutely works, is that when you're out with a guy, you just continually ask questions about him and you allow him at a few points to kind of come back and ask you things. And this goes back to the whole reciprocation of the questions, because it's okay if you're setting the tone here. Okay, so if you know you're going into it this way, and I want to ask him a few questions, I want to learn about him, so I'm asking him about his family, we're talking about his job, what he likes about his job, what he doesn't, not the standard questions. You're digging a little bit deeper. And then he asks a few things about you. That's great. The reciprocation is great. And you answer those questions, and then you somehow bring it back around to him. At the end of the day, you'd be surprised because he's going to leave that date and he's going to think, wow, she really knows a lot about me. And man, I hardly know anything about her. And oddly enough, that is very intriguing to a man. Who knew? They realize that they don't really know that much about you. And now they're inquisitive and they want to know more about you. And they end up now calling you because they want to find out more information. Very interesting, right? Who knew? But it actually works. So that's a good thing to do. The third good thing to do on a first date is have a positive attitude. Nobody wants a bump on a log. So go into the date with a happy, positive attitude. What they say is you attract what you are, right? So if you're a negative downer, then you're going to attract a negative downer. So if you're super happy and positive and vivacious, then you're going to get that in return. That's really super cool when you get that reciprocated back to you, right? So you want to have a positive attitude going into it. I mean, you don't want to have these conversations where you're just sitting there and you're totally bummed and you ask him a question and it's just like a downer response. It just puts the whole night into a downer feeling and it makes you feel negative and next thing you know, you're ready to go because you're kind of over it. That's not very interesting and fun to go out with somebody who's negative. We all know that. Nobody likes Debbie Downer. Number 4, do let him know you are interested in going out again. Now, that's a tough one because we're all supposed to play those little games, right? But if you've had a great night out and the conversation was flowing and you find yourself very attracted to him and you're hoping he's going to ask you out again, then let him know. I'm not saying you need to be blunt and just blurt it out that you want to go out again, but there are little signals that you can give, little signs. Maybe while he's talking, if he says something funny, you just kind of stroke the top of his hand when you laugh. Or maybe you drop a little comment like, well, that movie would be fun to see next time. It's just those little small things that trigger him to let him know that you're interested and that maybe you want to see him again. So we have to remember that guys are just as nervous as we are. And they're looking for and trying to read any signs that we can find to let them know if we're interested or not. So why make it so difficult? If you're interested, give that little nudge. Just let them know it's okay to ask you out again, that you're wanting them to ask you out again. And some guys really appreciate that. Did you know that they say if you're on a date with a man and you don't think about what it would be like to kiss him even once or twice, that he's not into you? Did you know that? If you don't have the desire or thoughts about wanting to kiss him now, the odds of you feeling that later are really pretty slim. So let him know that. You can kind of give him that little bit of information that you definitely want to see him again. Number 5, do break the dating rules. This is kind of my own rule. This is a big one for me. There's so many different rules out there on what you should or shouldn't do after a first date. So some say you should not reach out or say anything until a few days have passed after the date. That if he texts you after the date, that you should just sit there and let a half a day or so pass by before responding because you don't want to seem too anxious. I say throw it out the window. That's just playing games. Nobody wants to play games. If you had a great date and maybe he asks you to text him when you get home and let him know you're safe, which is super sweet, every guy should be doing that, by the way, then it's okay to say, hey, I'm home and thank you, and that you had a great time. It's okay to do that. If you want to call him the next day or text him, do it. He's going to appreciate it. I really think that we get so wrapped up in worrying about what the response is going to be and what they're going to think of us, and we're missing out on those really fun moments and the really exciting moments that give you the butterflies when you can actually say to them, hey, I had a really great time today, and I would really like to see you again. Thank you so much for paying for me or for taking me out or whatever it might be. It's okay to do that. So if you want to call them after the date, then call them. I'm not saying to continuously do it without them reciprocating anything, but men want to feel wanted just as much as women do. And so you need to remember that, and it's okay to do that. So there you go. There's your top 10 do's and don'ts on a first date. I want to thank you guys so much for listening to me today and allowing me to be vulnerable with you and to share my experiences of a first date with you. I hope that I gave you a little bit to think about and that you will remember some of my key points at least when you go out on your first date. And if you're lucky, you'll meet someone amazing, and I hope that will end up being your first last date. Thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Relationship Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review that really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Once again, I am Andrea Kanoki, and I can't wait to see you again on the next podcast. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.